Hello, I'm Diane, and today I want to talk about some of the books coming out in August. I have 16 books to talk about, which is a lot. Some of them come out today, August 4th, so let's get right into it and start with those. The first book is Steelborn by Taylor J. LaRue. This is a fantasy book, the first in the Steelborn saga series. The story follows two main characters, the first being Rhea, who is known as the Crimson Dagger, and she is a renowned thief in this world, and she has a debt that's due. When her most recent heist goes wrong, she is now at risk of not being able to pay that debt back, which is not something that will go over well. We also follow Kalen, who is an immortal warrior. However, he has been cursed, and the curse is now getting closer to his heart and risking killing him. And although he is a good and noble character, he knows that he needs a thief to ally with him and steal the cure before this curse progresses and kills him, and the two must work together so that Kaylin can get cured and Rhea can get the payment for getting this cure for him so that she can pay back her debt. The next book is The Infinite State by Richard Swan. This is the first book in the Decurion saga. This is a sci-fi story following Catherine Fuller, whose husband has just died, and her husband was an esteemed member of the governing group of this galaxy-spanning empire, and following his death she has been left with a very large wealth. Life under this empire is very strict, not very enjoyable. They're surveilled and controlled in pretty much everything they do, and with this new fortune that Catherine is inheriting, she finds herself with the opportunity to purchase a virgin world and establish a much better society for people to live under. However, the Empire is not interested in seeing this happen, so she's going to have to try and find some people to work with her and help her see this plan through while keeping it a secret and avoiding the dangerous risk of being caught and stopped by the Empire. The next book is Time Travel for Beginners by Jacqueline Moriarty. This is another sci-fi book set in Sydney, Australia, where there is a cafe that promises that they can send you to any point in time without there being any risk of you messing up the timeline and affecting the present. This opens up a lot of possibilities for the people that come in, and also a lot of hope for some of them who might be hoping to go back to a better time or return to a day in the past of their own life to relive that for whatever reason. We follow three different characters in this story. One of them is Anna, who is offered a job at this agency and gets a chance to see the people who come in and where they're hoping to go to. Teddy, a customer whose marriage has recently imploded, and he's hoping to go back in time to figure out exactly what went wrong. And Jade, who for some reason believes that this agency has promised her false hope and now despises them because of it, and will figure out if this agency is actually delivering the things that it's promising, or if there's some sort of catch attached to this experience. Another sci-fi on August 4th is Murder at the End of the World by Akane Araki. In this story, there is a meteor that is about to hit the Earth. There's about 3 months left before the entire population is going to be wiped out. This has caused most people to panic. However, one of our main characters, 23-year-old Haru, is still determined to get her driver's license before this meteor collides into the Earth. One day, Haru and her driving instructor, Izugawa, discover that there is a dead body in the trunk of their vehicle, who is clearly a murder victim. The driving instructor is also an ex-cop, and the two of them team up to figure out who committed this crime, where this body came from, what's going on, and as they begin this investigation, more bodies start turning up, and there is apparently a serial killer that has sprung up in the midst of the end of the world panic. So they continue this search and trying to stop the serial killer from claiming any more victims, and also figuring out if it even matters if they catch the serial killer, since everyone's going to be dead soon anyway. Then we have Mostly Human Resources by Grace Vile, which is the first in the Entity Case Files series. This follows Alexis, who works a desk job at the Entity, which is a company that manages the world's cryptids. Her dad also worked for this company and he was killed on the job. So she has committed herself to continuing his legacy, but from the safety of a desk at the company and working her way up. However, when one of her own wardens that she keeps track of goes missing in the field, she is determined to not only save her own career, but also to save that family the heartbreak of going through what she experienced and finding this warden before something happens to them, assuming that nothing's already happened. And one of her co-workers decides that they're going to go along with her because their goal is to become the youngest employee at the company to discover a new monster. So the two of them set out to the Appalachian Mountains to hopefully find this warden before any of the potentially dangerous cryptids that live there do. Moving on to next week, August 11th, we have a contemporary fantasy called The Inevitable Undoing of Zahara Douglas by Leslie Penelope. The story, of course, follows Zahara Douglas, and in 1995, she watched her twin sister get taken in a car by a stranger and disappear. Following this, no one seems to have any idea who her sister is, including their mother. 4 years after this, with the impending Y2K crisis, Zahara comes across evidence that her sister does exist and she's not the crazy one. So she hires a private investigator to look into her family's past to figure out what happened to her sister and also why no one else seems to have any memories of her. This investigation turns up some family secrets that could have potentially devastating consequences. The next book is The Dungeon Book by Gareth Hanrahan. This is a fantasy following our main character, Bait. She was taken as a baby and brought into this dragon's dungeon, and she doesn't remember any life outside of this dungeon. She has been raised by goblins and a sentient skull, a minotaur, and has sustained herself by eating a blob of corridor slime, which sounds pretty gross. However, this dungeon also has lured in treasure hunters and adventurers, as dungeons tend to do. And we see Bates' world starting to change and her having to figure out her place in it, whether she belongs in this dungeon, that's the only thing she's ever known, or if she actually has a place outside of the dungeon. The next book is These Vile Hearts by Melody Robinette. This follows Maddox Sinclair, who is a diabetic who has lost her job and, of course, with that, her health insurance, which is pretty devastating when you live with a lifelong illness. So she flees to the forest and finds a dryad queen who she makes a deal with. She can kill the Redwood King, then she will be cured of her diabetes. We also have Prince Castor, who is the brother of the Redwood King, and he is cursed that anyone who loves him is doomed to die, and he makes a deal with his brother that he can break this curse if he makes a mortal fall in love with him. Maddox, unfortunately, confuses Castor for his brother the king, who she's supposed to kill, and Maddox, who of course is immortal, Castor has the idea that she could be the one he makes fall in love with her to break his own curse, leaving them in a very complicated dynamic where they could potentially help each other or destroy each other in favor of curing their own illness or curse. Moving on to August 18th, the first book is actually already out, but it's been acquired by a new publisher and is re-releasing, and that's Time to Play by Erin Ampersand, which is the first book in the Apocalypse Parenting series. This is a book about a woman with 3 young children, and one day when her husband is not home, all of their electronics stop working, and they receive a broadcast that Earth has been selected to participate in an intergalactic game show competition to sort of level the playing field. All electronics and combustible fuel sources have been neutralized, and everyone gets to choose one power for themselves. So since everyone on Earth is required to fight until this competition has ended, this woman and her 9, 6, and 3-year-old children need to figure out how to survive, how she can protect them and lead them through this, and hopefully make it to the end of the competition alive. Next book is Siren Says by Jennifer Herrera. This is a fantasy book following Raven, whose family has this plant magic that has been historically very destructive. It was what killed her mother and many of her ancestors, and now she has it, and she is trying to find a way to get rid of it before it ultimately becomes the curse that destroys her. Her estranged aunt comes back into her life and offers her a cure for this magic, or at least learn how to control it. Her aunt tells her that she needs to capture one of the spirits that roams her hometown so that it can grant some secret wish. This is going to be a very dangerous task for Raven. However, not completing it could also leave her with this magic that's ultimately going to kill her. Not a lot of good options there. The next book is a graphic novel sequel, and that's Resident Alien Volume 9. I've been reading the series. I'm all caught up with it as far as the collected volumes go. So this is the next one. It is the 9th volume, so I'm not going to give a synopsis for this because it's going to spoil a lot of things. I started the series after having watched the TV adaptation, which I really liked, and so far I'm enjoying seeing what's been kept the same and what is different, because they are pretty different feeling while keeping a lot of the major things the same. And with only 2 volumes left planned in the series, I'm enjoying seeing what's going to happen next. And moving on to our last release date of August 25th, the first book is Makeshift by Peter Rock. This is a sci-fi about 3 sisters who are stranded on an island that they call Makeshift. And these 3 sisters believe that they are the last humans on Earth. Some outsiders slaughtered their community and left them stranded on this island. And so far as they know, for whatever reason, they don't believe that there is anyone else outside of the 3 of them, so they stay on this island foraging and fishing to sustain themselves and telling each other stories of what they remember of their times before they were on the island. The oldest sister, however, occasionally leaves the 2 younger sisters. They're not really sure where she goes, but she leaves and comes back with supplies sometimes, and one day she finally takes them with her. So they leave and then return to the island, and following this, they learn a bunch of things that change the way they think about what's going on in the rest of the world, that the reality they've been living in might not actually be what's going on. This puts a strain on their relationship, but they also still very much need one another as they figure out where to go from there. Then we have The Devil Knows Her Name by C.N. Bear. This follows Tess, who was attacked and left at the brink of death by a man, and she vowed that she would do anything if she could survive, and the devil heard her and offered her a deal. This deal resulted in her remaining ageless and tied to the land that she lived on, which is now a wildlife sanctuary, and she has gained magic that lets her protect this land and the animals within it, until one day she rescues a fawn that has unnatural appetites, and her instinct and her requirement to protect it begins putting her at odds with the other residents in this community where the sanctuary is situated. The devil offers her another deal that he can save the sanctuary if she'll just pay the price that he's asking of her. And Tess needs to decide if this bargain is worth taking, or if her own magic will be enough to save this land. Next is Love Me Like a Rock Song by Shelley J. Shore. This follows Delilah, who is left at the altar right before she's supposed to record her first solo album, which she has written a number of love songs for that don't really seem to apply anymore. So she goes off on her planned honeymoon road trip by herself, looking for inspiration on her way to her recording session, hoping that she can write enough new songs that she'll have enough material to actually record this album. A couple hours after she departs, she picks up a stranger called Emmett, and Emmett is a golem who has been given one last fatal task by his master. So for Emmett, going along with Delilah on this trip is just sort of delaying his inevitable end. The 2 end up going on this road trip together, each with their own reason for heading to California. Next is The Carousel of Forgotten Places by S. Hattie. This This follows Rika, who has been an immortal timekeeper for the past 500 years, living in a magical fair at the edges of time, where she manages time threads and also protects the spirits who live there. However, the carousel at the heart of the fair begins showing rot, and a live human eventually falls through time and ends up landing in this fair. The fair begins falling into chaos, and Rika and her time god boss need to work together to try and get this human back home and figure out what is causing this rot and prevent it from further deteriorating the fabric of time and tearing everything apart. And the final book I have to talk about is Any More Questions for the Corpse by J.J. Unthank. This follows our main character Malowin, who was raised by two skeletons and is trying to finish university without using any more of his necromancy, which he does not like. This is made further difficult when a secret order recruits him to help them hunt a serial killer. Running out of ideas and clues, the police decide that maybe someone who can use necromancy will be able to provide them more information by talking to the dead. He works together with a vampire, a magical empath, and a shapeshifter, and together they try and use their abilities to finally solve this case and put a stop to this serial killer. Those are all the books coming out in August that I think sound interesting. Quite a lot of them. Let me know what you're most anticipating for this month. Otherwise, that's all for me today. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.